Well, certainly not the Sunday that the Raiders were hoping for. Eddie Paskal here at the Intermountain Health Performance Center with my man, Brice Butler. So there is some positivity. And thank you for joining us for the fifth quarter presented by Twitch. And as I said off the top, perhaps not the Sunday we were hoping for, Duffel, as the Silver and Black fall 32-13 to the Pittsburgh Steelers, dropping their record to 2-4 in the process. Let's start here, right? I like to kind of zoom out before we kind of zoom back in. So we were going through the book, Brice, and this was a 12-7 game at halftime, right? Yep. Ugly game, not a particularly aesthetically pleasing game, but a close game nonetheless. After the second half, though, not the case, as the Steelers go on a 21-6 run and really take care of business there. From your perspective, man, and I do want to dive into the first drive in just a second, but again, kind of zooming out, like, big difference between the Raiders we saw in the first half and the Raiders we saw after the intermission.
Yeah, it looked much more sloppier in the second half. The first half, even though offensively we couldn't really get it going after the first drive, like we talked about, it wasn't too many mistakes going on. We had a couple 3-and-outs. Defense was holding up. It was, playing bend, don't break defense, which was working out pretty well, especially seeing to it that our offense wasn't really doing anything much after that first drive in the first half. And then I think after the roughing the passer going into halftime and, obviously Justin Fields gets that touchdown, after that, it just seems like some of the discipline when it comes to just playing the game from a fundamental standpoint kind of was left in the locker room. And, Pittsburgh just kept chugging away, and they started making big plays and started extending the lead.
And AP talks about it in his press conference that you and I just listened to. He said, I was really pleased overall with the tackling, with the effort, not the effort, but with the kind of fundamental everything in the first half, right, defensively speaking. In the second half, obviously, it gets away from him a little bit. But yeah. I said we want to hit on that first drive because really, man, if you're looking at highlights from today, first drive and then not much else. But the first drive, man, it was good. It was nice. It was everything that we expected to see and hoped to see. Raiders, after the Raiders defense holds, bends don't break, like you said, down 3-0. Raiders get the ball back, march down the field, 10 plays, 70 yards, just under 6 minutes. Really looking and kind of feeling the way that we wanted this offense to look, right? And we'll talk about Aiden O'Connell in just a second, but a nice balance between running the ball and throwing the ball. Alexander Madison doing his thing. At the end of that drive, Raiders are overall 4.5 yards a carry, and you're like, yes, this is what we were hoping to see. We talked about kind of that infusion of energy in replacing Gardner Minshew with Aiden O'Connell and what that was going to do to an offense, and you say, oh, okay, I get it, right? This is how it's supposed to look.
Right.
What happens after that, though?
I don't know. I mean, just like you said, everything looked great, good mixed bag. Come out with a few run plays first, get past midfield, then they start letting Aiden go a little bit with some RPO action, hitting Brock and those guys. And then after that, it's like you can't find any type of, continuity. There's no rhythm after that. It was second drive, it's pass, run. Third drive is pass. And I wrote down right here in my notes, it's like it looks like the run game has been abandoned. We talk about it, we hear it every week. AP talks about trying to get the ground game going, establishing, the identity of the team, which is ground and pound, which is playing physical up front. And my question would be to whoever's calling the plays or, whatever was on the script, because, teams come out there with like a first 15 script or whatever. Was it like after the first 7 or 10 plays happened in the first drive, were the rest like pass plays? Because after, like I said, we abandoned the run. We literally abandoned the run. And then after that, it was like we weren't playing in front of the chains. We weren't on schedule. And now we're going out there frantic. And luckily, we only were down 12-7 at the first half because our defense was playing well. So I do not know. We would have to go down there and talk to somebody who's down there calling the plays as to why, our guy Madison and the other running backs in the herd there were not getting touches.
Well, and this is like, again, to kind of like zoom out a little bit too, Brice, is, the past 2 games, granted, one in a losing effort, the Raiders have run the ball well. So going into today, the past 2 games, they ran for 120 yards and 150-plus yards. Yeah. Then we look at that first drive, right, and the Raiders are running the football. So, we've talked about it a lot, right, with Jason Fitz and with you and with all our pals this offseason. Like, like you said, the identity of this team offensively is going to be to run the ball.
Yep.
And for the first couple of weeks, you're like, are we going to get there?
Yeah.
But now, through 2 games, and then the first drive of a third game, what you want to do is being effective, right? It is working.
Right.
And then you get away from that, and then you throw a lot more on your young quarterback who's clearly not playing with the full benefit of his talented playmakers.
Yes.
And so to me, and again, like I'm not here to pretend like I know more football and X's and O's than anyone on the staff, right? My question, though, was like, you now kind of have proof of concept a little bit, right? You got 2 games and a quarter of like, this is what we can do and this is what we can do well. And then it goes away. And I think, I guess, just like almost from like a fan perspective, like that part of it kind of confuses me a little bit.
Yeah, it confuses players too. Like, I mean, just because you're thinking it does not mean the players are not thinking it either. Like, you might have receivers on the sideline like, yo, like the run game was working. Why aren't we running the ball anymore, right? So it's not just a fans thing. It's everybody's thinking the same thing. And, if you're on the team, you kind of know, what the game plan looks like. You know what you want to do, but most of the times, what you hear the coaches saying in the media is what they're telling their team. Like, we want to establish the ground game. We want to establish, the line of scrimmage. And how do you do that? You do that by running the ball first and then opening up the pass play. So when you watch the first drive, you see exactly what an offense – that's classic football. We run. We're getting it going. You're going to put some people in the box. We'll hit you with a couple play action, a couple RPOs. It's modern football, so you got to throw the RPOs in there too as well. Run pass option. And then, you can pick what you want. And that's what it looked like we did in the first drive. And, I'm watching that first drive like, we about to go to work on these boys if we keep doing this. And then the second drive, pass, run. And then I'm like, all right, why didn't we run the ball on first down? Like, what are we doing? And then now we had to pass it on second down, and then we decided to run it on third down because it's 3rd and 10 instead of, trying to throw it again or whatever. So then, it just keeps going that way. And so after that, the fourth drive, they're trying to get it to Madison again, which he didn't touch the ball that much, and then he's, negative 3 yards, couple passes, but then we're still not doing anything. So that is a great question. I'm a receiver. I used to play ball, and like when you are out there and you see the offense have success early, and it seems like you're going away from that success, and you're struggling as an offense as a whole, you always question while you're in the game, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a big one too is, right, and again, like we need to talk about Aiden O'Connell, his first start of 2024 earlier this afternoon at Allegiant Stadium. But like, I think for me, when we now as we're 6 games into the season, right? Like, not to make it this simple, right? But when the Raiders have found balance offensively, typically it's spelled good things for them, right? When they are in balance, right? When they're dropping back 30, 35 times, whatever it is, right? That's where they haven't kind of found this sustained success. And I think for me, like coming into this game, right, Brice, and I certainly am not this, X's and O's guru, but you look at the state of the Raiders offense, right, and you are down without Devontae Adams and without Jacoby Myers. You are down your 2 top wide receivers, right? That's just reality. And yes, you have this ultra talented tight end in Brock Bowers, this young rookie who all of us are so excited to see. And he once again finishes the day today. Another good day for Mr. Bowers. He goes 9 catches for 71 yards. But I would think, though, if you're a member of this staff, right, and you see kind of the reality of the way that the roster is kind of working this week, you say, hey, this is a week we got to run the football.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to put too much on Aiden, right? Aiden's first start. But again, right, like you and I are certainly not in those meetings. But stick with Aiden O'Connell for a sec. It was the big news of the week, Brice. Silver and Black make the move from Gardner Minshew, inserting Aiden O'Connell into the starting lineup for the first time in 2024. He finishes his afternoon at Allegiant 27-40, 227 yards, 1 touchdown, and an interception there. And I don't know, man. Like, AP talked about it after the game. He's going to have to go back and watch the film to really kind of see how Aiden, performed. But it felt like this is kind of a hard game to judge him on, simply for the fact, like I said, you're down a handful of weapons, right? And it just feels like an odd one to kind of really put your put your finger on how he as an individual played.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those where, in my opinion, if I was a coach, I've never been a coach. Well, I coached flag.
There you go.
I coached my kids in flag. But if I was ever a coach And if I was AP in this situation and I know what we're dealing with as an offense with all the guys out, I would not be grading him on the performance of like what do the numbers look like. I would more so be looking at it in a way of like, how was his decision making? Was he staying poised? Like, did it seem like the moments started to become too big for him? When we went down, in the second quarter, like how was he at halftime? Was he like trying to lift guys up? Like I'd start looking at it that way. Like what was he doing? The intangible things, the things that I can't really coach him on. You know what I'm saying? Because I know, when we get all our full arsenal back, we'll have more talent to get him the ball. But while he doesn't have that talent, what is he making out of what he has?
Yeah, and it's tough too, right? Because we talk about, and I know we've talked about it a bunch, but going back to that first drive, and you're like, I get it. I understand why the Raiders made this change. This is the most kind of in sync, in rhythm that we've seen the Raiders offense in a while, and then unfortunately it goes away. But like, we can talk about the lack of playmakers out there today for a variety of reasons. We can talk about the defense getting worn down. We can talk about whatever. But AP brought it up pretty succinctly in the postgame, Brice. He goes, look, if you are -3 in the turnover department and you would give up a block punt, it's hard to win in the NFL. It is really hard to win in the NFL, and unfortunately, that's where the Raiders found themselves today. -3 again on the turnover differential, and dude, I know all turnovers are costly, right? Like, I mean, any coach is going to say it doesn't matter if it's the first play of the game or the final play to go win the game. Like, turnovers are all cost. But, man, the turnovers today they just felt like backbreakers, man. I mean, you look at the Laube fumble at the end of the first half. You look at Amir down at the goal line. I mean, it's just they all just felt like backbreakers, and the Raiders just couldn't get over the hump of kind of overcoming those big momentum swings.
Yeah, man, those are tough. You look at a team like the Steelers, right? Like, those dudes aren't like crazy touted on offense, right? Mm-hmm. But they're making do.
Yeah, and we talked about like built similarly, right? Teams that want to their identity be running the football and stout defensively, similar teams.
Yeah, same scenario, but they go out there and make their plays. Just like you said, you had some turnovers, right? They took the ball away from us. TJ Watt punching the ball out twice. I think one was when we were backed up and the other was when we were like basically about to punch in a score. So, they made the plays that they needed to make for the team to be in the best position that they could be in to win the game. And they did that. And like today, we just didn't do that, man. Like you're talking about the turnovers. Like my big thing was, we only had 4 penalties. But 3 of those 4 penalties ended up in being a touchdown or a touchdown being revoked that turned into a TJ Watt punch-out fumble, Amir Abdullah on the goal line. And so those plays hurt. Like those are plays where you as a team, you as an individual can lose confidence in a game where we were in the game, but then anytime that we seem like we're about to, punch in a score, we're losing the ball, we're giving it away. Or anytime we seem like we're about to get off the field as a defense and catch a pick, we get a roughing the passer. Like, you know what I'm saying? Those are confidence dropping, penalties and things that you never want to see on the team, especially when you're in a situation where it felt like this game was a must-win game.
It's interesting too, right, Brice? Because we talked about the turnovers being like kind of feeling like backbreakers. I mean, the penalties were the same thing, and you brought it up right after the game ended, and we looked it up. Raiders have 2 roughing. So first off, 4 penalties in general for 42 yards, right? So when you look at it on paper, it doesn't scream like, oh my God, the penalty woes today.
Nope.
But just the timing, the situation, right? Both of those roughing the passers, like you brought it to me, resulted in touchdowns.
Yep.
Right? Each of them, right? The first one, just roughing the passer, Justin Fields scores, I think, 2 plays later. The second roughing the passer, Najee Harris goes 36 yards down the sideline the very next play. And so you literally see, right? Like if you're looking at it very black and white, numbers, right? Mm-hmm. 14 points. Mm-hmm. That's a huge swing, right? Mm-hmm. That is in the NFL where so many of these games come down to the margins, the thinnest of margins, and you especially playing, like we talked about, without your full complement of talented playmakers, the Raiders just didn't have 14 points to give away like that today. You know what I mean?
And really, I mean, if you want to take it a step further, you can think of it as a 21-point swing because of the fact that we were going to score one of those and then it ended up being a turnover. So it kept points off the board for us to come back on a team that was up on us. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I mean, today obviously we gave the ball away 3 times. And then basically we had 3 turnovers, and that's 6 big plays that made the outlook of this game totally different.
Yeah, and I think too, like, I think in a game like today where the Raiders get that touchdown towards the end, and we make it 32-13, but you look at the final score and you look at kind of the course of the 60 minutes, and it felt like there were so many things that kind of just like snowballed on themselves a little bit, right? We look at the ineligible man downfield, right? Very next play, Amir fumbles, right? And literally taking points off the board. Yeah. But this is one that I thought was kind of interesting. A.J. Cole, first blocked punt of his career, right? The Raiders were, I'm trying to look at the exact stat. I want to make sure I have it right. Here it is. The Raiders had gone 136 straight games without having a blocked punt before today.
That's a long time.
That's a really long time. 3rd longest active streak in the NFL entering the week and the longest streak in franchise history. So you talk about some of the things that this Raiders team has just done well, some of the small things, some of the little things, some of the fundamental things, just getting a punt off. And not the case today. And so it felt like, especially kind of as we enter mid-3rd quarter, the 4th quarter, it felt like everything was kind of just snowballing on them today.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. We were there in the first half, a lot of energy. Everybody was there. And then obviously we came to the studio. We watched the second half, and it didn't seem like the energy was there at all. Seemed like it basically got sucked out of everybody. The life was gone, and, you're just trying to hold on and make the game not look embarrassing pretty much. And we got beat.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think at the end of the day, Brice, like, you're absolutely right. Like, the Raiders just got beat. And here's one more, because I want to talk about the ground game in just a sec. But, you look at the Steelers and their ability fundamentally, right, organizationally, defensively, to take points off the board. Mm-hmm. The Steelers have 4 red zone takeaways in 2024, right? Mm-hmm. No other team in the NFL has more than 2. Right, so you talk about their DNA, you talk about what they want to be about. It's tough. It's not giving an inch, even in the red zone, right? And we saw some of that come up today. And like I said, I just want to shift back to the offensive side of the football for a sec, where we look at kind of how everything finished today. And the Steelers win the ground game. This is not a pretty one. 183 to 57. Right.
I mean, didn't you say Najee today was the first game this year he had over 100 yards?
It's the first time he's gone over 100. And I'm curious, too. Like, obviously, you've played a lot more football, and a lot more football at a high level than I certainly have. Like, it just felt like at some point, right, Brice, where in the second half, the Steelers up big, they're going to want to run the football. It feels like it's almost inevitable. Right? Like, it feels if Najee feels inevitable, right? Yeah. Like, it just feels like we talk about it, it's snowballing and then coming downhill. And yeah, I mean, it's tough, dude. You're not going to win a lot of games in the NFL when you're outgained on the ground by almost 130 yards. Like, you're just not.
Yeah, and then, it's interesting, too. We played probably the best dynamic duo when it comes to quarterback and running back rushing earlier. And we did a decent job, I would say, containing those 2 guys as a whole, right? But today, obviously you got Justin Fields, who's more of a running threat than a passing threat in the beginning of his career.
And just for reference, Brice, Justin Fields ran for more yards today than the Raiders did. Our
whole team. He ran for 59 yards. We ran for 57. Obviously, there was a little bit more of a concerted effort with him, trying to get him on some, design QB runs, which was good for them. They got him out of the pocket. They rolled him out for passes, and then the passes in there, he can get upfield. So, obviously they played, within their game. They didn't ask him to do too much. He only threw the ball 24 times for 145 yards. And some of those yards at the end, in my opinion, were, like you said, kind of like, I don't want to say garbage time, but obviously they were just trying to force feed George Pickens at the end of the game just to make sure his attitude was all right going back home to Pittsburgh today. So, I mean, if they didn't have to deal with that, I mean, Justin probably would have threw for like 110 yards, right? So he did everything that they asked of him, and, we just had a hard time containing it. It's really hard, I will say. Like, I never played defense in the pros, but, watching a quarterback like a Justin Fields who is a dual threat, like a strong dual threat, it's hard to contain guys like that because, like I said, you have him rolling out the pocket and one guy maybe drops contain on letting him outside of it, and then there's nobody open, he can go run.
Yeah, I mean, the dude's a freak athlete.
Yeah,
right?
he's a
like
freak
I
athlete.
don't think there's anyone in the NFL who's gonna try to convince you otherwise, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, this is a dude who can make plays with his legs. Like, we have seen it now in 2 different locations. We saw it in Chicago. We've now seen it in Pittsburgh. And,
Right.
and again, man, like, I don't want to I really try not to oversimplify things, right?
Right.
Because I mean, you know so much better than I do how intensive, how intricate, how complicated the NFL game is.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, Brice, if I'm looking at this game, it comes down to me for two things, 2 pretty simple things. The Raiders couldn't effectively run the ball and help out the young quarterback, and they lost the turnover battle -3, right? And again, we talk about taking points off the board, putting points on the board for the opposition, and it didn't feel like the Raiders have had enough oomph in them today to kind of overcome, admittedly, what a pretty sizable mountain a -3 turnover differential is.
Yeah, and then another thing to take notice in is offensively, if we're not going to have some of our guys in there, like Jacoby Myers, obviously Devontae, do we have trust in the other guys to make plays? I mean, today, like, I'm a receiver. I want big plays down the field. I want explosives. Like, on offense, you want explosives. And I can't tell you a time that my man threw a ball past 20 yards.
And AP asked about that, right? He asked about that in the post game, like whether or not he would like to see some more aggressive, whether it's in the play calling or the execution or whatever it is, right? And I think at some point, like, to your point, like, being a receiver, like, you have to keep the defense honest a little bit. Like, even if you're playing the numbers game and say, hey, there's a 10% chance that this play works, like, it almost feels like you got to put that shot up to make them play defense.
Yeah, you make it real easy for a defense to play defense if you're not basically stretching them out at all. If they know that, okay, you don't have a run game, you're not running the ball. I'm getting passionate right now. You don't have a run game, you're not running the ball, and you can't pass the ball because you don't trust in the receivers that you have on the field, and we trust that you don't trust the receivers you have on the field. It makes it very easy for us to play ball. And now the defense is out there having fun. They're laughing at you, they're giggling, they're knocking balls down like, oh, y'all stink, y'all can't do nothing on us, and then it knocks your confidence down because if you're a player that you feel like you can help, but they're not, calling on you to help, maybe obviously as a receiver, like, you have to go back and look in the mirror and say, like, hey, what am I doing wrong? Where are the other guys? Like, how are you practicing throughout the week?
Yeah.
Like, why don't the coaches, why might not Aiden have confidence in getting the ball to you? Because it's like, yo, we need all hands on deck right now. Like, 17's not there. Cool. If Jacoby's not there, all right, cool. We need the next man to step up. Like, you can't expect Brock Bowers to catch 15 balls a game and go for 200 and win the game. Now, obviously, you need partners in crime. You need other people there, but we need the intent. It's not about you going out there doing things. We need the intent of you to be like, hey, we need to dial up these plays and call these plays and throw these shots. Even if they're not completed, we need to make them believe that we will take the top off or we have big play, explosive play potential, and it will make the defense a little nervous.
And I think the big thing for me, Brice, and it kind of goes along with what you said, is like, in situations like today, right, it's got to be Brock plus who, right? Because you look at Brock, right, finishes the day 10 targets. We talked about the 9 receptions.
Yeah.
Going down to the next most targeted guy is DJ Turner, 2 catches for 37. The targets after that, I'm reading this wrong, but the guy who had the guy who had the most targets after Brock Bowers, they were the 2 running backs.
Yep.
Right? You're looking at Madison's got 5, Abdullah's got 5, and then Harrison Bryant, the tight end's got 5. So you need to figure out who's it going to be, right? Because look, like I said, all of us can agree. We're really excited about what Brock Bowers is going to bring to this team.
Yep.
This is a dude who week after week after week now, right? He is showing you, like, I am not only a really good tight end, I'm a really good football player. I can be dynamic. I can be multiple. I can do so many different things, which is awesome.
Right.
But it's going to be Brock and who.
Right.
And I think, like, certainly when you got Jacoby, when Jacoby's ready to go, it's Brock and Jacoby. It's Jacoby and Brock. But we saw today the depth really get tested out wide for the silver and black. And unfortunately, like it did not result in the kind of offensive kind of explosion, offensive dynamicism, if that's the word I'm looking for, that we were hoping to see. But I think, again, man, as we kind of zoom out, Raiders sitting at 2-4. Tomorrow's not going to be fun, right? I mean, AP talks about a 24-hour rule. You kind of let this marinate for 24 hours, and then we are on to the next. And what is on to the next for the silver and black? A road game against the Los Angeles Rams. And he was asked about the AP, I should say, was asked about this, as was Aiden O'Connell, during the postgame. And the question was posed to both of them. How do you kind of put your foot in the ground and say we're kind of stopping this snowball from going, right? Like, we can all agree, we can look in the mirror, understand that right now we are a 2-4 football team, but we have the moment now where we have to shift that. You've been in locker rooms, right? You've been in locker rooms of teams that have won games. You've been in the locker rooms of teams that have struggled to win games. Like, this feels like a moment, right, for the Raiders. Like, this feels like, for better for worse, this is a moment for your 2024 Las Vegas Raiders. What do you need to see from the dudes in that locker room to kind of get out of this funk now? This is the first time in this year where they've lost back-to-back games now.
It's a concerted effort, man. It's not just the players. It's the coaches as well. It's like, how do we figure out with what we have, how do we figure out to take advantage of what we have and do what we still need to do? Like, what we want to do, is that us? You know, you have to ask yourself that question. Like, what we want to do, like what we're trying to set out and do every week, is it sustainable? Is it like something that we can actually do, or are we tripping? Like, do we need to make an adjustment? Like, and that's coaches, you know, typically, you know, when you have like a veteran QB, you know, that's the QB can make that decision too with the coaches. Now, I don't think Aiden or Minshew are going to be making those decisions. So, you know, these guys are both young cat. I don't want to say Minshew's a young cat, but he's young in this offense, so to speak.
Sure.
So he's not going to be making those decisions, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, who are we? You know what I mean? Obviously, we've been preaching this, like, but are we that? Do we need to make an adjustment? And so, like, that's what I mean by it's the coaches and the players, right? Like, the coaches obviously have to figure it out. The players kind of know because they're out there playing. And so, obviously, you want everybody to be on the same page so that when AP comes in there on Tuesday or Wednesday and says, hey, like, this is what we need to do. Like, we're struggling here. Like, this is what we need to do. The players then, you know, when they're looking at themselves, they're talking about it. They're like, okay, you're right. Like, that's the same stuff that we talked about. Like, let's go out here and make this thing happen. So now we're all working together while we're practicing rather than, like, kind of scoffing at each other and being like, man, like, you know, this not going to work anyways. You know, and that happens. Like, you know, forget the fact, you know, people think, when you're in the pros, like, certain things don't happen. People don't have disagreements. Y'all know that's a lie because most of y'all are adults that are listening as well. And maybe some of y'all are married. Maybe some of y'all have been in relationships. Y'all are grown and you know you have disagreements. So the same thing happens on the football field too. And the best teams are those teams that can come together as one, knowing where we have issues at, even if it hurts to hear it, and moving forward with it. So that's what the team has to do.
And I think, candidly, right, this is where you lean on a guy like Max Crosby a lot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about, you know, Max being the heartbeat of this team, being the face of this franchise, being one of the faces of the NFL now, right? Like, this is where you lean on Max and you kind of go as Max goes. And we talk about Max's effort, and we hear it on the broadcast all the time, just that this is a dude who doesn't take a play off. This is a guy that's going to put his best foot forward every single time. And just real quick on our way out, Max finishes again with a half a sack, three quarterback hits, and 2 TFLs. Well, Duffel, there were not a lot of positives that came out of today, but there was one positive, and that's we had you in the house. It was good to see you here.
You jinxed it.
I know,
What'd you say before the game?
I'm not going to repeat it because I did make note of your past 2 appearances have been Raiders wins, and I was hoping
I was feeling good early,
I
too.
know.
I was feeling real good early.
I was hoping we could keep the positive momentum going. But I'll wear that one. I'll wear it. But we talk about it every time, man. You got so much cool stuff that you're working on these days. You're a busy man. You're a man in demand. What is coming down the Duffel pipeline?
We got keep your eyes glued on what Sports Illustrated has going on. I got 2 shows that we're about to start shooting this week. One's called Off Day and one's called Back 9 with Brice or Back 9 with Duffel, whatever you want to call it. And I'm excited about those things because I get to go out and play with current athletes, go out and hang out with current athletes, and, you know, see what's going on inside their headspace and, you know, what makes them tick and what makes them the great players that they are. So I'm super excited about that. And obviously you can, you know, go check out the gram, the YouTube, at Brice_Butler, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Keeping it easy, keeping it the same, keeping clean for everybody to be able to find your boy at any
right.
time.
That's right. You're doing a great job. Obviously, it's a lot of fun for us to follow from afar of all the cool stuff you got cooking. But tough one, as we said, Brice, with the silver and black ultimately falling 32-13 and dropping to 2-4 in the process. But the beauty of the NFL is we're going to do it all again next week. So, for Eddie Paskal, my man Brice Butler, and everyone else at Silver and Black Productions, thank you guys for hanging out with us. Enjoy the week, and we will be back with you next week, same time, same place, for our next episode of The Fifth Quarter, presented by Twitch.
Peace.